Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we are going to learn about the types of immunity. Immunity is the ability of an organism to resist any hazardous foreign matter by the action of defense system of the body. For instance, to get protected against various foreign components that may be present in food, in water, in air, or an animal product. Immunity is actually the ability of the body to resist against any harmful foreign component that may be present in food which we ingest, that may be present in water which we drink, that may be present in the air which we inhale, that may also be present in the animal product which we interact with. Types of immunity. There are two major types of immunity. Number one, innate immunity, and number two, acquired immunity. Acquired immunity is also called adaptive immunity. Innate immunity is also called inborn immunity. Innate immunity is the inborn immunity which could provide complete resistance even at first exposure. Innate immunity starts development during the development of the fetus inside the mother's womb. When the mother gives birth to the baby should have an intact form of innate immunity. The innate immunity development starts during the fetal development, and when the fetus become mature, when the mother gave birth to the baby, it should have a complete set of innate immunity, and which could provide complete resistance even at first exposure of the foreign matter. Acquired immunity, which is not inborn, which is acquired during the passage of life, which is acquired during the lifespan and developed with the passage of time, which can't provide resistance at first exposure. The acquired immunity start development after the first exposure, and during the second exposure the acquired immunity is fully functional, which could provide immunity against that organism during second exposure. It cannot provide resistance during first exposure. During first exposure it starts development. This is instigated, this is stimulated. The acquired immunity, the formation, the development of acquired immunity is stimulated during the first exposure. So this could not provide resistance at first exposure. Innate immunity is having two major types. Number one, external innate immunity, and number two, internal innate immunity. The external innate immunity generally refers to the immunity which is inborn and which is provided by the skin, by the alimentary canal, by the respiratory system, by the urinary system, or any the epithelial layer of the body, which is provided by the epithelial layer of the body. So this is external immunity. This is external innate immunity, which do not involve the internal organs of the body. It do not involve the internal organs of the body or the interstitial spaces, etc. of the body. So the example of external immunity is the shedding of epidermal layer is the is also types of immunity. It's also type of immunity, because if an external foreign matter get attached with the epidermal layer, with the stratum corneum, the outermost layer of epidermis, that is called stratum corneum. If a foreign matter get attached with the stratum corneum, so this stratum corneum will eventually shed off from the skin. So this shedding will also shed off the microorganism or any external matter. So shedding is also a type of immunity. Production of mucus. Mucus production takes place inside various types of epithelial cells that may be present inside the respiratory canal, that may be present inside the alimentary canal, that may be present inside the the urinary system. So this production of mucus also provide immunity. This production of mucus also provide immunity because the mucus do not give opportunity to any foreign matter to infect the cell, because the mucus lining protect the cell lining. The third one is saliva. Saliva contain large number of enzymes and many other components which could kill the microorganism, and uh, which can destroy the foreign matters. So this can also provide innate immunity. The keratin surface of the skin also provide immunity because the outermost layer, the epidermis is having 5 major layers, and each of the 5 layers contain keratin, and keratin can resist the microorganism and any other foreign matter. The sebum, which is produced by the sebaceous glands, which are present inside the skin, which is present inside the epidermis and dermis. So the sebum, which is produced by the sebaceous glands, also provide a protective layer, ID layer, to the skin, and which can protect our skin. This is also present inside the ear, which could provide immunity, which can provide resistance against the microorganism and uh, any other foreign matter, that may be insects also. The cilia is present inside various epithelial layers. For example, the ciliated epithelium is present inside the respiratory canal, inside the trachea, inside the bronchus. So this cilia is in continuous motion, which the wiping motion of the cilia, uh, the wiping motion of the cilia actually should have actually expel all the foreign matter from the body, foreign matter from the respiratory canal, foreign matter from the trachea. So the wiping motion of the cilia expel all the foreign matter from the trachea. Similarly, the gastric juices contain HCl and many other uh, proteolytic enzymes which can digest microorganism, and which can kill any foreign matter. The tear also consists of various lysozyme and many other components which can resist the harmful matter. The sweating is also a type of innate immunity, because this can also wash out the microorganism. Similarly, diarrhea is also form of innate immunity, because when there is some infection inside the intestine, the small or large intestine, so during infection, the smooth muscles of the intestine start rapid peristaltic movement, and that rapid peristaltic movement induce diarrhea, and that diarrhea uh, help in the expulsion of the foreign matter or any microorganism from the body. So this is a friendly phenomena, the diarrhea, which can provide innate immunity. Similarly, the internal innate immunity, which is a type of immunity which is inside the body, inside various organism or inside various tissues of the various organism. So, for example, the first of all, interferon. If a virus invade a cell inside the body, if a virus invade a cell inside the body, this cell, focus on this diagram. In this diagram, we can see that this is a cell, and this cell is infected by a virus. If a virus infect a cell, this cell produce some chemicals that are called interferon, and these interferon molecule stimulate adjacent cells. All the adjacent cell with this infected cell are stimulated by the interferon, and these cells produce some sort of proteins. These interferons stimulate the production of messenger RNA, which is responsible for the production of protein, and these protein provide resistance against this virus. So each and every type of cell have the ability to produce the interferon, and interferon is a type of stimulant for the adjacent cell, for those cells which are not infected by the virus. So this is the interferon is also a type of innate immunity, but this is internal immunity, which happens inside the human body, which do not happen outside the human body on the epithelial layer. It's happen inside the body. So the second one is complement system. Complement system is a protein system, which is also activated when the foreign matter comes in contact with the uh, with the with various types of tissues of the body. So that complement system activate large number of proteins, and those protein activate the macrophages. Those activate various white blood cell to invade those microorganisms. So the complement system is also innate immunity system. The third one is natural killer cell. Natural killer cell are the type of cell which are responsible for the killing of organisms' own cells. These are responsible for killing or the cytotoxicity of their own cells. For example, if a cell is highly infected, or if a cell is mutated, if a cell gets tumorous or cancerous, so when the cell become cancerous, these cells are these cell can be recognized by the natural killer cells, and natural killer cell become all around these tumor cells and destroy these tumor cells. For example, these are natural killer cells. These two natural killer cells come all around these tumor cells and destroy these tumor cells. So when the body own cell is destroyed by the type of the cell of the body, that cell of the body is called natural killer cell. And these natural killer cells are found all around in the body, and these do not destroy the normal cells. These destroy the cells which are highly infected, which have low chances of survival. So these destroy those cells by itself. The next one is the phagocytes. Phagocytes, two major types of phagocytes are there in the body. One is the macrophage and the other is the neutrophils. Macrophages are large, as the name indicates. These are large cells, immune cells, and these are type of white blood cells, neutrophils. Both of these have the ability to engulf any foreign matter. Both of these have the ability to engulf any foreign matter. That may be virus, that may be bacteria, that may be any cell component, but that should be foreign matter. These engulf the foreign matter and destroy those foreign matters. So these are called phagocytes, and so this is also a type of innate immunity. So these macrophages and neutrophils and natural killer cells and interferon producing cells are present after the birth of the baby, in the baby after his birth. So this is innate immunity. The second one is acquired immunity. Acquired immunity is having two major types. Number one, the cell mediated immunity, and number two, the antibody mediated immunity. The cell mediated immunity is provided by the T cells. It's provided by the T cells This is provided for the immunity of the cells when there is some sort of infection inside the cell, and those cells should be cope with the various types of cells in the body, various types of immune cells of the body, and those immune cells are T cells. So the T cells are having three major types: the cytotoxic T cell, the helper T cell, and the memory T cell. So the T cells are produced, the originated from the bone marrow, and then those T cells are get matured inside the thymus or any other glands. For example, the lymph nodes also. So the T cells are get matured inside the thymus or lymph nodes, and after maturity, these cells have the ability to fight against any foreign material which are entrapped inside a cell of the body, which have gone inside the cells. So these are coped by the T cell, and this is a type of cell-mediated immunity, and this is acquired immunity. This is acquired immunity because this do not provide immunity at the first instance. This is having the acquired immunity. The big difference between the innate immunity and acquired immunity is, first of all, is the specificity. The acquired immunity is specific. The acquired immunity is the immunity against a specific microbe, while the innate immunity is not against a specific microbe, that may be against any type of microbe. The acquired immunity do not provide immunity at first exposure, while the innate immunity could provide immunity at first exposure. The innate immunity, you will not show any sign or symptom of disease, because at the first exposure the microbe are killed, while in the acquired immunity, the first exposure the patient or the host get the signs and symptoms of that disease, because during the first exposure the acquired immunity is in development stage. So the first type of this acquired immunity is cell-mediated immunity, and cell-mediated immunity is provided by the T cells, basically the T cells. The second one is antibody-mediated immunity, that is also called humoral immunity. That is also called humoral immunity. That is called humoral immunity because that is provided for the humor of the body, for the fluids of the body that is not inside the cell. That is outside the cell, in the fluids of the body, that may be in the interstitial spaces, that may be inside the plasma, that may be inside any other fluids of the body, synovial fluid, etc. So in the antibody mediated immunity is provided by the antibodies, and antibodies are produced by the B cells, B lymphocytes or B cells. B cells are converted into plasma cells, which produce antibodies during the first or second exposure also. So the antibody mediated immunity is also specific, but the antibody mediated immunity is having two major types: number one, the active immunity, and number two, the passive immunity. The active immunity is provided by with the help of antigen, with the help of introduction of antigen to the host. When the antigen is introduced to the host, and the host start producing antibodies against that antigen, so this is the active immunity. When the antigen is introduced into the host and the host start producing antibodies against that antigen, this is a type of active immunity. This is called active immunity because the body actively produce the antibodies against this antigen, against that antigen. And the passive immunity do not involve the introduction of antigen. It involves the introduction of antibody, because the body is not actively involved in the production of antibody, or the body is not involved in the production of antibody. The body is passive. So we introduce the antibody directly into the body to destroy those microorganisms or those antigen. So this is a type of passive immunity. This is called passive immunity because the body is not involved in the active production of antibodies. Body is not involved in the production of antibody, while in the active immunity the body is involved in the production of antibody. The body is introduced with the antigen. The antigen is introduced into the body, and the body start producing the antibodies against those antigen. While in the passive immunity, the body is provided directly with the antibodies. The antibodies are introduced into the body, and the body do not produce its own antibodies. So there are two types of active immunity. Number one, natural, and number two, artificial. The natural active immunity is the best example is the measles infection. When any virus, for example, the measles virus infect the body start producing antibodies against that measles. But during the first exposure of the measles, the body will have signs and symptoms of their disease. So the body will start producing the antibodies against this microbe, against this virus. But the artificial active immunity is the active immunity in which we introduce attenuated viruses or attenuated microorganisms to the body, in which we provide vaccines to the body, and the body start producing antibodies against those vaccines. The body start producing antibodies against those vaccines. So this is a type of this is a type of active immunity, and this is artificial active immunity. But still, this is active immunity because the body is still involved in the production of antibodies. The body is still involved in the production of antibodies. But the body is involved in the introduction in the production of antibodies against the vaccine which we have introduced to the body. Number two, the passive immunity. The passive immunity is as I have told you, that the passive immunity is when we introduce directly antibody to the body, and that antibody start protection against that antigen which have already been there in the body. So the passive immunity is having two types: number one, natural, and number two, artificial. For example, the natural one is having the example of fetal blood and the colostrum. When the mother feed the baby with the colostrum, with the first milk of the which is provided to the baby, that is called colostrum. That colostrum contains large number of antigen A, immunoglobulin A, that is given to the baby. That is antibodies. Large number of antibodies are there in the colostrum, and that introduction of antibody to the baby, naturally to the baby, that is passive immunity. But this is natural. Also, some antibodies are transferred from the mother blood, from maternal blood to the fetus during the fetal development, and that blood should also have some antibodies, and those antibodies are naturally transferred to the baby, and that is also a type of passive immunity. But this is natural passive immunity. The artificial immunity is the immunity when we provide some antibodies to an individual which is infected by a specific microbe, which is infected. For example, if if someone is bite by the rabid dog, so we provide the rabies vaccine, that is actually the rabies antibodies, and those rabies antibodies are active against those rabies virus which have been introduced by the rabid dog to the human body. Artificial, that may be in the form of artificial passive immunity, and also maybe in the form of when somebody is bitten by the by a snake, and we provide antibodies of that snake to the human, so that is also a type of acquired immunity.